Mall of America. For more than 30 years, it has been a retail leader and an international destination, and it remains the largest mall in the U.S. Not to mention, it welcomes millions of guests from around the world. It's huge, but it's also so much more. In this podcast, you're going to hear the real stories of how it started and why it continues to thrive. You'll hear about challenges we faced along the way and what you can learn from them. We will feature guests and experts from all walks of life and business, and along the way, you'll laugh, learn, and maybe even change the way you look at things. So if you're a fan of the mall, a brand new visitor, an entrepreneur, or a dreamer, prepare to dive deep into so much more. This podcast is presented by the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to So Much More, a Mall of America podcast where we meet with business leaders. We tell stories, we share best practices, and we give you the inside scoop of what's happening behind the stage. I'm Jill Renslow. I am your host today. I'm the Chief Business Development and Marketing Officer here at Mall of America, and I am joined with two fabulous female leaders here in our marketplace that we are just blessed to have here in Minnesota. I have Wendy Blackshaw. She is the CEO and president for Minnesota Sports and Events. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you.
And I have Tanya Dreesen, who is the VP of Partnership Activations, Special Projects and Events for the Minnesota Vikings. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you guys here. So we are here to talk about female leadership and the trials and tribulations that we face every single day, the opportunities that we have, but also, some of the challenges that are in front of us. And so I would love for you guys to start out and tell our viewers and listeners about your journey of how you got to where you're at today. So Tanya, why don't you kick us off and give everybody a little sense of your journey that brought you through your professional path?
All right. Well, in full disclosure, we were just doing the math so that the numbers are right here as we go back in time. And we go back literally 30 years. Started at the Toronto Sun newspaper. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And in my role at the Toronto Sun, I was responsible for special projects. And that involved marrying what we were doing in the printed product with what was happening out in the province, and that was sports. And if you ever read the Toronto Sun, you would see that every front cover is always sports focused. And it taught me and it ingrained in me how powerful sports are on a community. And in my role at the Toronto Sun, it was everything from doing special sections and appearances and promotions around our teams. Moved from the Toronto Sun to the Toronto Star and did the same thing. And then took a vacation, met an American, fell in love. You guys know that story very well. And moved here to America in 2002. And at that point, I was debating whether I stayed in newspaper and worked like I was then with the sports teams and how we bring the sports team stories inside the printed product and online product too. And did that here and did it with the Star Tribune and then did it in Denver as well, for the Denver Post and Rocky Mountain News. All newspapers were always the official newspaper of the teams, which taught me a lot about all the leagues and what was powerful and innovative about the leagues, and also maybe what was holding some of them back. And then in 2008, I wanted to switch to the other side and wanted to actually work for a team. And we were back here in Minnesota, and we had just started having kids. And I reached out to the Vikings and I cold called them, and I cold called the Vikings because I felt like the Vikings are one of the most powerful brands here in Minnesota. I loved what they represented in the community and the desire, the relentlessness, the innovation, and pitched myself to them. And in 2009, accepted a position. And here I am 15 years later, responsible for the team, as you had mentioned, Jill, that does activation and events, and still special projects. It's that title has always followed me through my entire career.
Because you're so good at it.
What it means is I have a great team that can handle things at a high level with a lot of creativity. And so throughout my career, that's probably been the constant, is that I've been very fortunate to have a great team to work with that has always tagged us as give it to that team to handle. We don't know how we're going to get it done, but we're going to get it done, and we're going to have a lot of fun while we do it.
I'm going to tell a Tanya story. So back in 2012, it was earlier, 2010, when I was with Sun Country Airlines.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no, yeah.
And you looked at me like you were frightened.
No, because because there's a lot of stories.
A lot of stories.
And I, admittedly, I'm from Wisconsin, and I am a lifelong Packer fan, and still am.
Is this where we cut the podcast here?
I was going to say,
We're done.
please say you guys next to each other.
Yeah.
So you and I connected, and you asked me to come to Winter Park.
Yes.
And I visited you at your office, and I said, I just feel really uncomfortable even being here right now. I do. I felt like I was, everything my family had instilled in me.
Because we put the credential on.
You were cheating on your team.
I was cheating on my team completely.
Aww.
And Tanya was so lovely, but she said, my goal is to, maybe you're not going to become a full-on #1 Viking fan, but my goal is that you not hate the Vikings.
I wanted us to be your number 2.
And you know what? Because of that, I am.
Yeah.
If the Vikings are playing the Packers, I still cheer for the Packers, but the Vikings are my number 2 team, and this is part of the reason.
You also success.
You
with
have.
Wendy.
You
I
are,
love it.
and you also are one of the best people ever in terms of sports activation. In terms of when I worked at Sun Country, you were absolutely so far and above anyone I had ever worked with in partnership and in just that relationship. So you're amazing.
Oh, well,
Absolutely. Well, it's a testament when you share the fact that you reached out to the Vikings. You didn't wait for them to come to you.
Exactly.
And I think that's important for people to think of as they're looking at their career paths, or if you're even looking to change. It's like, go after the things that you love. It shouldn't feel like a job. It should be something that you enjoy doing. And when you had a passion for getting on the sports side and recognizing that the Vikings are a huge brand for us, I think that's a testament to who you are as a professional. And that you're not going to wait for things to happen. You're going to make them happen yourself. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Wendy, we have a long history together.
We do.
When I started at Mall of America back in the day as an intern in our events department, Wendy was our marketing director.
That's
so
very true.
Talk a little bit about your journey to
Yes.
brought you or where you are today.
So before Mall of America, right before that, I was with the Minnesota North Stars. And as we know, the Minnesota North Stars, which I'm like right across the street, left and went to Dallas. And at that point, and I was in sales, and I had heard about a sales job here at Mall of America and sponsorship sales. And there was no retail sponsorship at that time. Really, nobody had really done that. So I interviewed, and it sounded like there were so many things that were transferable to this new area of retail sponsorship. And so I was thrilled. I think Mall of America had been open about 9 months, something like that. And so we made it up as we went along. And it
We're
ended
still
up
making it up as we go. 30 years later.
And I hired your sponsorship person, who's one of my favorite people. And yeah, I mean, it was such an adventure. It was amazing. And then I went to Sun Country Airlines, and that was a different kind of experience. Also incredible. I learned so much, but also we went through a bankruptcy while I was there. It was during a time when there was we had an owner who went to prison for a Ponzi scheme. And I bring that up because this is not something that most people have in their career. And it was, again, one of the most difficult yet rewarding experiences because we went into bankruptcy and we got through. I was an officer of the company, and we really bonded together, and we were determined to make sure that Sun Country made it out on the other side, and it did. And that was incredible. At that point, I hadn't really seen my children or my family for a long time. And so I ended up consulting for a little while, and then worked on Super Bowl. And then Super Bowl led to Minnesota Sports and Events. So the connection of marketing and sales really has been, I think, so helpful for me because, I get a lot of resumes and kids, they just want to be in marketing. They just want to start in marketing. They want to be in marketing. I think if you have that sales background, it is so helpful, and it allows you to then branch out into other areas and, be the CEO of a sports commission.
Absolutely. I listen to your stories and I'm envious because you've had such amazing exposure to different brands because I have lived here. I have grown up here at Mall of America. As I said, I started as an intern, and it's just been great to be able to work with professionals like yourselves with different projects because I think that's what's kept it alive for me is having those constant challenges and different projects and partners. Because starting as an intern and working my way through the marketing side of the organization and really working with you opened up the doors from a marketing perspective and looking at the branding, the advertising, and that's what brought me into the opportunities of business development. And I had the opportunity to work on the rebranding of Nickelodeon Universe, which used to be Camp Snoopy for those fans that started with us at the beginning. But that transformation to Nickelodeon Universe was that step outside of marketing for me and brought the opportunities of working with all the different departments and the different facets of what the business model was going to look like for the theme park, from the rides, the food operations, to the IT and ticketing systems, to retail. And it really broadened my horizons of what was possible in different career paths. And that brought me to the opportunity to travel out to New Jersey for our sister property. And to your point, like really tackling things that I never had did before, having lobbying efforts and working with politicians and how we were going to posture the property and how that was going to position ourselves, leveraging the success from Mall of America. And great learning experience. And it also gave me exposure to our ownership, which really helped guide me and mentor me in how to handle different business opportunities outside of the marketing world. And so then coming back to Minnesota after doing that for a couple of years, it gave me the foundation to lead the team and to look at the future of this property. But to your point, like even when we started 30 years ago and we were just throwing things out there to see what was going to stick, I mean, we continually do that because we cross paths that have not been conquered before. You're exploring new territory, and that's what's been great about Mall of America is anything is possible. Having a family ownership that supports us in being able to try new things and explore new opportunities has really kept me motivated and challenged every single day. And I think that's why I've become a lifer here at the mall. It's 25 years later.
And what's not wavered, though, even over 25 years, though, is your energy to bring in innovative pieces to the mall for the experience of the people that are shopping the mall, or even to your staff. You are constantly updating the mall, and you're doing it. It feels like you're doing it steps ahead of what others are doing in brick and mortar. And whether it's your technology immersion, or it's the stores, or it's the layout, how you have continued to keep the energy high and your passion for being progressive and innovative is what's made the mall, I think, so successful.
Well, the key is working with partners like yourselves. Like we're pushing each other to think big and think different, right? We're always, what could be possible. Right. And so in our world, and I mentioned our ownership group, the majority of them are men at the leadership level. And so for me, it's been a learning experience of how to have a voice at the table and making sure that you do your homework and you're prepared for those conversations so that you can help make a difference. So the sports world is full of male leaders, right? And so being a female leader in that space has posed challenges, I'm assuming, over the years. And so when you look at your most recent roles or when you've worked with other sports teams, how do you approach that? What have you learned and how has that made you a stronger leader in your own selves?
I will say that, I'm older than both of you. So I started my career at a time when I worked for a television station, and there were all the leadership team was all men. And it was a very, very different time. I mean, I think back now to that, and there were a lot of things. They were lovely, but it was things that you would never accept now were completely acceptable. Even terms of endearment, things that again, I think back and I'm glad that we have advanced where there are a lot of things that used to be okay are not anymore, because I wouldn't want my daughter to have to, go through just some of those things. And for, a voice at the table wasn't even on the table at that point in time. And it gradually changed, and it wasn't necessarily in that particular field. I think it was in many fields, and that's just how it was. But as more women entered the workplace, as we stood up and said, this isn't okay, it has gradually changed. I will say that in sports, it is still definitely a little bit more of a male-dominated field. And, you've been working for the Vikings for a long time, so you've probably seen changes as well. But I think that the key is, as we continue to have a voice at the table, as we continue to mentor women, especially young women, to come and work in sports, I think it will change even more. And I hope it does, because I think we're a lot smarter anyway. No offense, Dan. But, we bring to the table a creativity and and also a kind of a kindness that sometimes I didn't have as I was going through the process.
Well, I feel like when you're a young female, you maybe push a little harder because you want to have that edge. You want to show that you're tough and you can do it and you're going to work hard. And I think that evolves over time when you've established yourself, when you build that trust, when you build that camaraderie with your colleagues, knowing that, okay, she can get it done.
Absolutely.
And then I think you soften up a little bit where you've established your tougher skin, I think, your thicker skin. And so then I think that, for me, that has changed over time, because I felt like I had to have a little bit harder of a shell at the beginning, and then that has just softened over time.
I think also, too, for me, earlier in my career, I took things a little more personally. Like if something didn't go right, I took it more personally. And I think that's something that I often give young people advice about. Like, things happen in business, and it's business. And just everyone makes mistakes. Actually, mistakes are great, and move on and don't let it affect you. And I wish someone would have told me that early on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've had different experiences from the media world to the sports world. In the media world, and we're going back 15 years ago, almost 30, it was, there was not much awareness around it. And so, the environment was not as inclusive. So we'll kind of park that one maybe and fast forward to today more so. Right or wrong, I don't resonate with it. Meaning, when I walk into a room, I don't take notice if there's how many men and women are in the room. And I do that because I don't want that to affect how I lead. What I will do, though, is, and this is where I think we have a gift, is I will take time to figure out the room, men or women, as to who's an ally and who is not, and who's an ambassador behind what we're trying to talk about here and who is not. And I think women need to flex that intuition muscle more. And that's the gut that you have when you walk into a room and you first meet somebody, whether they were warm or not. And that, for me, is maybe what I lean into more so in my leadership, and also in terms of gender and gender equity, is that piece. Are you a good human? And how are you in that boardroom? And how are you treating one another? Because I've seen it on both sides, where the way that you're treating people may not be the right way, and it could be male or female, both doing it. But us more so focusing on what we're reading in the room and responding to that, and using that intuition as a gift. And I do think that that's what makes us a little different, though. Because don't you find you'll sometimes leave the room and you'll have picked up on things that maybe some others haven't. And it's because you have an ability to read that room and understand from body language and eye contact, and whether they started looking at their phone, whether they were paying attention or dialed in or not. That is something that I think makes us unique in a room. And I think knowing what you're unique at in the room is very important, and because that will bring the confidence. And so I always tell my team, for example, when you walk into the room, meet everybody. Don't just go and grab your seat. Walk around the entire room and meet everyone. Then take your seat.
You never know where those conversations will lead.
Right.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Right.
I love it. So if you look back in time, would you have done something different? What do you tell your younger self or younger professionals that might be listening to this? Is there advice that you would give as you look back?
And I can answer that question two ways. One, because I have a 16-year-old daughter, and so what would I tell her if we're thinking of young females? And that would be the intuition piece, is listen to that and use that. In terms of what I would do differently, I would say in the early part of my career, I probably spent too much time focusing on what was on the resume versus the character. And I think today when we're hiring, we have to balance that more. Because you can teach anybody to do anything, but you can't teach them to be a good human. And that has such an impact on culture. And so probably earlier on in my career, I didn't watch that as much. I didn't hire for that as much. And now I certainly do.
We talk about that a lot. It's the what versus the how.
Yeah.
It's what you do can be taught. How you do it, you can learn over time, but there is that intuition and just that general style that you can't necessarily teach. And it's that cultural fit that you want to make sure that works. So, Wendy, any thoughts?
I don't think I would do anything different, because I think everything that I have done has led me to the point where I am. And but I think that for especially women coming up in sports, it is such a growing field, and I think it's so important for us to mentor younger women. And I think at least what I'm seeing, there seems to be a lack of that since the pandemic. And I've had a number of discussions with a number of different Ys, being one of them, that they need women to kind of step up and mentor these young women coming into sports and into all different fields. I think the pandemic has changed so much about how we work, and that human interaction isn't there as much. So I would say that I hope that we continue to not forget about this generation, that they're not necessarily in the office 40 hours a week. And so they don't know necessarily how to manage up, how a conversation at the water cooler can impact your entire career. Without those opportunities, I think it is a lot harder. So, mentoring women, and also really thinking about how do we change the new reality to make sure that men and women are given the opportunities to move forward in their career.
I love that. So what would you say is the one quality that you have as a female leader that you're most proud of? Wendy, I'll let you go first on that one.
I think that it sounds kind of odd, but I think I worked for a lot of men who were really great, but there was a kind of a lack of humanness, a lack of vulnerability, empathy, kindness, and I feel like I do bring that to my team. That's one of the things I'm proud of. I feel like I'm approachable. I feel like they can come and talk to me. I'm firm when I need to be firm, but I think that is probably the thing I'm most proud of. And I feel like I still have like my Sun Country kids who I see, every other month. I've got the kids from the Super Bowl. I call them kids. I see them, and I know it will be the same. Like, I have kept in touch with all of these young people that I've mentored. They've become dear people in my life, and I feel like that relationship. I think that's probably what I'm most proud of.
That's great.
I would say it's on the people side, and it's about being able to develop people and put them in the right spot at the right time in their careers. Probably what brings me the most joy is building the right team. And I often will reflect back to see, and I'll look up to see who's moved into what positions and where are they now. And knowing that you had something to do with pointing them in the right direction. Because sometimes you'll have a member of your team that will aspire for this particular position. It's sexy. It sounds like that's where I'm supposed to go next. But yet you have that conversation that you can say, I know you think this is where you should be going next. you are so good at this, though. Have you considered this? And where I'm at in my career now, I think that that's probably brings me the most joy, but also maybe what makes me a little bit different there too. And that's the quality that I want to harness and be able to do more for people on that side, is making sure they have that right career path for their character, for their personality, for their skill set, and being able to harness that more.
I love that, because it's about people. I mean, both of your examples were about harnessing those relationships and helping people move forward, because when you see that success with others, it's beneficial and it's rewarding to yourself.
Because how many times have we done that with each other, where I'll say, Jill, I have, remember, we've done this.
I've got somebody that you need to talk to.
You need to meet her.
And vice versa.
Yeah, she would be perfect for what you do right now at the mall and what you guys, where you're going next.
And for me, I think a lot of it's around curiosity, just being curious every day of what's possible, whether it's with people, with projects, with partners, but it's always just keeping that look forward of, what's going to be next. So I'm going to wrap this up with a little speed round so that our listeners and viewers can get a little bit more insight of who you guys are and what you do. So you guys don't know what I'm going to be asking you, so I love this. I love spurring.
Okay, you ready?
Ready. So just quick answers.
One word?
Quick answers. It can be a short answer, yeah.
Okay.
So Wendy, what's your favorite place to travel to?
Oh my gosh. I was just talking about it. Puerto Aventuras, right outside of Cancun.
I love that. Are you planning to go there soon?
No, and I need to. Thank you for that idea.
Tanya, latest book that you read?
Oh my gosh.
I can answer that
Go
one.
ahead.
Spare.
Spare. I haven't.
Oh, you're reading, are you? Okay.
Very good.
On my list.
I can't remember the
Prince
title
Harry.
of it, but it's about the hurry up and say no book. It's
Okay, if it comes back to you, it'll be good.
yeah.
Favorite podcast that you listen to on a regular basis?
Oh, it's a true crime, and it's slipping my mind. It's on Wondery, and I read it when I'm walking the dog. And I can't remember, but it's so good.
Love it. Yeah. Do you have a favorite podcast?
I don't.
You don't? Okay, so what's the one thing that's always in your refrigerator?
Oh, the one thing that's always in my refrigerator.
Diet Coke. I'm sorry. Diet Coke.
Cheese. Always.
Cheese. Okay.
Multiple varieties
We
of
love
cheese.
cheese. We
Because
love
you never
cheese.
know when you're going to have to just all of a sudden
Have a nacho.
kick out a charcuterie board.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
nacho.
last couple. Favorite concert ever?
The Eagles, Las Vegas.
Fantastic.
Oh,
Okay, so no, favorite movie for you?
favorite movie. Jill, you're giving me all the
sorry.
hard ones.
Okay, I gave you the refrigerator question.
I know, but I just cleaned out the refrigerator.
Okay, favorite sports team, Tanya?
Oh, I love it. Minnesota Vikings.
Yay. And we know that Wendy's is the Packers, so we're all good to go. And sorry, it's 2-1. I'm a Vikings fan. So thank you, Tanya and Wendy, for joining me to talk about women in leadership. We could go on for hours to talk about this. There's just so many stories and great best practices, but that's going to do it for us today. For so much more, thank you for listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of So Much More. If you want to hear more, be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you find your favorites, including Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. And you can also watch a video cast on YouTube. Go to podcast.mallofamerica.com to leave a review, ask a question, or give us an idea for the show. Until next time, thanks for listening. So Much More is presented by the Bloomington Convention and Visitors Bureau, the official destination marketing organization for the city of Bloomington, Minnesota. Before your next trip to Mall of America, visit bloomingtonmn.org for answers to all your travel questions, deals and packages for hotel stays, and so much more.